Welcome to After School with Mr. Van Huss, episode 31. And today I'm joined by my friend Allen Sircy. Now, Allen has written a number of books that deal with local legends and folklore, what some of us might call ghost stories. Recently, he described his books to me as being history books disguised as ghost story books. All I know is I've read about 5 or 6 of them at this point, and they are very, very interesting. So I'm really looking forward to talking to my friend Allen Sircy. Welcome to After School with Mr. Van Huss. I'm here today with my friend Allen Sircy. Allen, how you doing?
Hey, I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Oh man, it is such a pleasure to have you here. I've really been looking forward to this. I have read, I think, about 5 or 6 of your books at this point, and man, they are so interesting. I get so into them every time I read one. So I've really been looking forward to talking to you.
Well, good. I'm glad to do it.
So starting out, what influenced you to do what you do? Like, what made you want to write, and made you want to like tell stories of all this like local folklore and things like that?
How much time do we got? I can go 3 hours. I can go 20 minutes. So I'll give you the Cliff Note version. So years ago in a previous life, I used to manage UFC fighters. I would travel to Las Vegas. I was part of fighting. I was going to Knoxville. I was going to Florida, Vegas. I was traveling a lot. It was a lot of fun. Well, as you get older, like the fight game, if, in your 20s, you're in your prime. Once you get in your 30s, it starts to dwindle. There's up and comers nipping at your heels. And all the guys I worked with, they had families, they got married, they walked away and retired, went to coaching. So I kind of I met my wife, I backed away too. Well, going to Las Vegas, going to Florida, going to Virginia, all these places I've been, all these crazy stories from the road from guys who get punched in the face for a living. So it's like, I'm going to write a book about this. There's just so many wild things, especially before the stuff was even sanctioned back in like the 90s. So I talked to these fighters, document all these stories, and I put this book out 2018, 2019, The Legends of Tennessee MMA. And it did okay. It's kind of like it's my love letter to MMA. It's like, hey, it's what I did. It's a lot of fun. Well, before that, my wife took me to Savannah, Georgia. And if you've been to Savannah or you know about a lot of history there as a colony, they fought the Revolution. Those big, picturesque, beautiful squares are all mass graves where all these colonial or the patriots are buried. Mm-hmm. So we went down there and we had a blast. I didn't really want to go. I wanted to go to the beach. She took me down there. I fell in love with the history and the hauntings and how it correlated with each other. Why is it haunted? Well, they tell you on these ghost tours. So we went back a few months later and did a second ghost tour. And we had a bad experience. We paid like 40 or $50, went to 4 or 5 places. It was kind of like, what in the world? We got gypped. So my wife said, someone should make an app, has all the haunted places for $2 and have it on the iTunes store. I was like, yeah, that's a pretty good idea. She said, you should do it. I'm like, I don't know how to code. She's like, well, just figure it out. So I bought a Mac and I spent an entire summer learning how to code apps, just watching YouTube videos. I mean, lots of sleepless nights. There's one day I got up like 5 in the morning, worked almost midnight that night working on code. I hit 11:55. I hit execute. I had one semicolon in the wrong spot, and the whole day I'd wasted an entire day. Coding is just, God bless people who can do it because it's super hard. But I spent the whole summer and I figured it out. And I went to Savannah and did this research, and I put together a Savannah app. Since I was bored later that summer, I had a template. I'm like, well, I'll do one for Nashville. So I made a Nashville app, and then I made one for Louisville, Salem, Boston, New Orleans, St. Augustine. Kind of just traveled around. I worked for a place a lot of vacation time. I would just travel and make these apps. Well, my wife and I in 2019 were expecting a little boy. And on a Monday night, 2 weeks before he was due, I'm sitting in the floor putting together a toy box from the shower the night before. And my wife comes in from work and she's really upset. What's going on? Well, the vice president of our company came in and closed their entire division. So I've got a little boy coming in 2 weeks, and I'm the only guy with income. So what do you do? What can you do? I just prayed about it. Well, the next morning, I'm driving to work. Let's do a podcast. It was like one of those motivational self-help things. And it said, you're never too old to go to college. And I'm thinking, man, I'm in my 40s. I can't go to college. But I'm giving myself this education making these apps. I'm going to write a book. How easy can that be? So I wrote a book, and a book is hard to do. So I spent about a year and a half researching Gallatin, the history in Sumner County. And if you're familiar with the book, the square burned numerous times during the Civil War. The town was occupied. There wasn't any big glorious battles like Franklin and Murfreesboro. They skirmished all around here, and they were hanging Confederate people behind the courthouse. Just a lot of weird history in Gallatin. lots of haunted old buildings. And I wrote the Gallatin book, and then I just kept going, man. I did Murfreesboro, Franklin. I've got 4 books on Nashville. I've been to Florida, from New Orleans to New Jersey. I just never stopped. Every morning I wake up, it's like that morning I woke up when I found out she lost her job. It's like a knife is in my throat. Every day that same feeling, man. It's like I got to keep going. I got to keep doing this. And I mean, the Lord's blessed me, and I left my job back in the summer, and I'm writing full time now. So it's fun, but it's hard.
That's awesome. I know I first noticed you through the Gallatin book because I picked that one up because I've always had just being a history teacher and being a history guy, I've always loved those old like legends and ghost stories and stuff. And like we talked about before, it ties so much into history because wherever there's one of these weird things happening that we can't explain, there's some historical reason that it could be happening.
Yeah.
I love that. So, and I'd always been fascinated. I've lived here in Gallatin since 2005, and had heard stories and taken ghost tours. And I've always been kind of fascinated with like the square and like just all the weird stuff that happens there. So that got my attention. And I just recently, I read your Knoxville book. And I just finished the Murfreesboro book because I went to college at MTSU, so I knew a lot of the Murfreesboro places and things like that. So it's just fascinating stuff. Did you have a writer that was maybe like a hero or an influence of yours that you wanted to be like when you first got into this?
Dude, I made it up as I went along, and I'm doing the same thing today. I just I didn't know how to write a book. I had the Tennessee MMA thing I did just kind of for fun, and I don't know, I'll write a book because I had the template from the apps, and Gallatin was a lot of weird stuff, and I noticed there wasn't a Gallatin book. And what's really wild is the book came out in August. I was at a convenience store in June, a few months before then, and I saw a front page article in the Tennessean, oh, this Gallatin ghost book is being written. I'm thinking, hang on, I hadn't told anybody I'm doing this. Or, I mean, people around town I knew about it, no one at the Tennessean, and there's no person who's writing a book. But I got mine out like a year before they did. So I kind of went under the radar. But I saw that and thinking, oh, no, I'm going to put this thing out and this person's going to beat me to it. But yeah.
Did you like writing when you were like in high school, when you were growing up? Is that something you were good at back then?
Man, I was a D student. I didn't like high school. I didn't care. It's like, I'm going to be in a band. I'm going to sing for Guns N' Roses. It's like, I don't, that's
I can relate to that.
But yeah, I mean, I wish if your students are watching this, please pay attention to Mr. Van Huss. He knows what he's talking about. Yeah, education is very important. And like the one thing I did enjoy in high school was history. Mm-hmm. And doing these is kind of like I get to really embrace that and dig into history, which is a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. I can relate to a lot of that because I wanted to work in the music business when I was in high school, and that's where I started my career at. But I found as I got older, I liked writing more and more, and I've never really attempted like a book or anything, but like writing is still something that I enjoy, but I didn't know that when I was 17 or 18. So I try to tell my students all the time, you never know what's going to happen as you get into your 20s and 30s and 40s, and your dreams start to change a little bit, and you never know what skills are gonna come back and help you.
What's wild is I did write, and I don't think I'm a great writer. I had most of my life I had season tickets to Vanderbilt football. So back in like '04, back when the internet was kind of just really starting to be a thing, I had this Vanderbilt football blog, or Vanderbilt sports, basketball and football, and it did fairly well. And then the UFC, the Ultimate Fighter, hit, and I'm like, I'll do a UFC website, and that's how I got involved. I started interviewing these fighters, and I got invited to go with them, and some needed fights. I got them fights, and needed sponsors, got them sponsors. Next thing I know, I'm going to Las Vegas half a dozen times a year. So it's just, yeah, if there's an opportunity, man, just say yes and figure it out as you're going along. It's like my earlier books. I mean, I had an editor that I wish I would had more hands-on experience with editing a book. But yeah, the books, when I first started out to where they are now today, it's day and night. So yeah, just you figure it out as you go along, and don't be scared to say no, and just jump in and just learn on the job.
That's excellent advice. I know you said you weren't the best student, which I wasn't either. Did you have any teachers that got to you like in high school that you kind of looked up to or made an impression? Any like history teachers or anything?
Yeah, Miles Cotham, he's my Bible teacher. I went to Ezel Harding in Nashville over on Bell Road in Antioch. Mr. Cotham was a very, very smart man. He memorized the Bible. you could tell him the verse, to tell you the scripture, and vice versa. He was just a genius. We had a baseball card club, and one day I said, "Hey, Mr. Cotham, how many home runs did Andre Dawson have in 1980?" He told me. The man was a genius, but he would lock his keys in his car. It's like he was so smart that like other parts of his brain were just like locked up. He couldn't use them. But yeah. I had a lot of great teachers. Mr. Stringer, I was in band. He was a member of the Opry for a while. He was very big on me. Like he would encourage me, to pay attention to English class. He didn't want me to flunk something, so I couldn't come to band. So yeah, he was very, your teachers, man, they got your best interest at heart. So please listen to them.
Absolutely. So you've written books on Gallatin, Knoxville, Murfreesboro, Franklin, Hendersonville. You covered a lot in Tennessee. Have you done much in East Tennessee yet?
Yeah, I got the Knoxville book. I've got a book called Tennessee Tales. I wrote a book called Tennessee Tales. I guess it was last year before last. Yeah. And when it's a funny thing happens when you write a book about ghost stories. It's like everybody wants to come tell you their story. It's like I'm Ghostbusters. I'm ready to believe you. It's like people can tell me stories, and I'll make a note, like my notepad on my phone. I'll just make a note and stash it away. And that's how like my Opryland book started. I worked at the hotel years ago, and I hear things there. Oh, well, so and so, my aunt worked at the park, and the park is haunted. So I'd make notes, and next thing I know, I've got a material for an Opryland book. So Tennessee Tales is basically just because I have Knoxville, Franklin, Nashville, big cities, right? Small cities like Burns, Tennessee, Portland, Spring Hill, Springfield, White Bluff. All these small towns have stories too. So Tennessee Tales, I made like a bunch of small town ghost stories. Well, I mean, I still get stories. I've got Tennessee Tales 2 be out next year. It's got stuff from like I'm drawing a blank, just all over the state.
So I grew up in Kingsport, very upper east corner.
Sensabaugh Tunnel. Yeah.
That's what I was going to ask you if you knew about yet. See, I'm one of those people. It's like, I got one for you. Growing up, we always heard about Sensabaugh Tunnel and Netherland End Road and like all that stuff. That's like, just a lot of weird stuff goes on. I never, growing up, I had friends that would go into Sensabaugh Tunnel and like, park and turn their car off and stuff. And for those that don't know, you're supposed to hear like a baby crying when you shut your car off. And then the legend was your car wouldn't start back. I would never cut my car off. I drove through there a few times growing up, but like I never wanted to cut my car off.
Mostly, there's two tunnels. There's one right down the hill. That's the real tunnel. The one that you can't drive through that one. The one you drive through, that's supposedly the fake one. The real one, base of the hill that you walk through.
Yeah.
But you know better than me. You're from there. It's just kind of what I heard secondhand.
Yep, and I think that's true. The fake one was the one that I think got most of like my friends and stuff. The one that you could actually drive through. But that one that you would walk through, I don't know if anybody I knew was brave enough to like go down to that one.
ETSU is haunted. You know that?
The what was?
ETSU. There's a building on campus. There was a plane crash back in the 80s that killed a handful of people. So it crashed, and all of a sudden they start seeing and hearing things in the dorm right across the street. So yeah.
Oh wow! Out of all these places you've been to and you've explored. And let me ask you first, you've done some like ghost hunting to research some of this stuff, correct?
Yes, sir. And I mean, I'm more of a historian. I've done it, but I mean, I'm more amateur, but I like to dig in, try to figure out why things are haunted. There's a book, my Downtown Nashville book. There's this building. I was reading the paper and I found out where in the 70s when they built it, like they had two people fell down an elevator shaft. So I was talking to the security guy. I said, hey, I was just curious, the elevator haunted, any ghost stories? He's like, yeah, man, how did you know about that? We don't really talk about that. I was like, well, it's in the paper from 40 years ago. But yeah, just kind of digging and stuff like that. But I lived in a haunted house over at Harding Place in Nashville, right behind Traveler's Rest. It's kind of what, I don't say piqued my interest, but kind of kept my interest after Savannah. In the 50s, there's a place called Traveler's Rest, if you're familiar, at Harding Place, South Nashville, going towards Brentwood. Well, in the 1300s, it was a Mississippi and Indian village. In the 1800s, Judge John Overton, who was a Superior Court justice, he bought this property and cleared the land. He dug up 3 Indian stone box graves to build his great big grand mansion. Well, in the 50s, my great grandparents bought 2 acres from the descendants and built a house there. Well, in the 90s, my great grandfather passed away. In 2005, they stuck my grandmother in a nursing home. So my uncle called me and said, hey, this is part of an estate. Insurance won't cover it. It's empty. We need you to come stay here. I was living in apartments. Like, sure, I'll make that work. So I moved in. And the first night I was there, the trash can moved 8 feet in the middle of the night. This weird stuff happened. I had a light in the den. I would turn it off each night, each morning. It would be on. I come home from work some days and all the TVs in the house would be on. Just weird stuff like that. So one day I hopped the fence. I walked over to the mansion. Said, hey, I live right over here. Weird things are happening. Is this place haunted? Oh, sir, I can assure you, no such thing as ghosts. Here we talk about the Native Americans, talk about the Overton family. There's no such thing as ghosts. You're wasting your time. Okay, so I go to leave, go to hop back over the fence. I see a lady getting out of her car. She's the period attire. She's a volunteer. I said, ma'am, they brought over here. Strange things are happening. Oh, honey, there's so many ghost stories here, but I'm not allowed to talk about it. It's like, okay.
That's interesting. What do you think what's the scariest place you think you've been to, or the place that creeped you out the most?
I don't really get spooked or scared. I'm trying to think. I mean, the Sumner County Museum up here in Gallatin. I was there late one night, and it's funny. This funny story. We did a fundraiser for the museum in Trousdale Place. And if you want to take a field trip, go to Trousdale Place. It's a beautiful mansion on the end of the square, belonged to a congressman and then Governor Trousdale. But back there where the museum is, it was formerly slave cabins they raised to build the museum. So we're doing this fundraiser, and there's an intern for Trousdale Place. And the night of the fundraiser, she made a remark to one of her friends, because she don't believe in ghosts. She wasn't really into. She didn't want to be there, but she had to be. She's an intern. So she made a remark to her friend, "Hey, if something's here, it's got to beat me upside the head to get my attention." So we're up there by the mannequin that supposedly moves. The lady down front told me that she's coming in the morning and seen the mannequin like this, and she's coming back at lunchtime and she's like this. I've been up there, I've seen her fall over when no one's around. But anyway, say she's haunted. So we're up there in front of this mannequin, all the lights off, and this little intern starts screaming. I pull up my phone and there's a handprint on her arm, or something just popped her on the arm.
Wow.
So, I mean, I wasn't really scared, but it was just really weird that happened.
Yeah.
Right.
That's very strange. I think whenever when Halloween comes and goes, I always tell my students, I usually have a day that I try to set aside for like just historical ghost story days. And I talk about, things that I've heard about the square and about like Craig Font, some of those
Yeah.
places that, you get the most stories about. And they've usually not heard a lot of them. I was plugging your books this year because I was telling some stories. I was like, if you guys want to know more of this, I was like, here's the book you need to go get.
What's funny,
Everything.
I never got. I gave a book to a buddy of mine, and he called me like a month later. Said, "Hey, I want to tell you thank you." I was like, "What's going on?" He's like, "Well, you tricked my son to reading a history book." And to me, if the book is a cupcake, the cake is the history, and the ghost story, or the witch trial, or the grave robin, whatever is the icing on top. That's how, because I tie it all together.
Mm. And it's great. And I think that's one of the things that makes me enjoy them so much. I know, the places I've lived, like Gallatin and Murfreesboro and places like that, I love knowing that history. And there was a lot of it, like some really like rich Civil War history in Gallatin that I did not know, before I started getting my interest piqued by some of these ghost stories and things like that.
Well, you mentioned Murfreesboro. Murfreesboro is a weird place, and Middle Tennessee did a horrible job at claiming their battlefield. I mean, Franklin's did a good job, but like Murfreesboro and Nashville, it's all developed. Like in Murfreesboro, down there on Thompson Lane, that little park, that's where 15% of the battle took place.
Mm-hmm.
Medical Center Parkway is ground zero, and it's all developed.
Yeah.
So there's all over Murfreesboro, but they're all in homes and businesses. Same with downtown or Nashville, which is now South Nashville, I guess Southwest Nashville.
Mm-hmm. So interesting. So, what is one life lesson that you think you would pass along to high school or college students today? Because I know it's probably a lot of my audience is students that I have go through my class and things like that. So what's one thing you've learned in your travels that you would encourage them to do?
Always bet on yourself. I mean, it's like writing these books. Like I was in a job I hated. I get mad at myself for having to work there. So I'd get up like 3 a.m. and start working on a book. I'd work till midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. My wife like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, I got to get this thing done. It's like you find something that motivates you, find something you enjoy. You got to find something you enjoy doing, obviously, and just work on it and just bet on yourself. And the only person who can stop you is you. That's how I've always been my mindset.
That's very, very good advice. Well, I appreciate you so much taking the time to talk to me today.
Yes, sir.
Where can people find your books if they're interested and would like to purchase a copy?
Well, they were in Barnes & Noble, Hendersonville, for those communists tore the bookstore out of there.
Man, I'm still complaining about losing the bookstore.
Well, Walton Ferry has moved across the street to City Square. So there's a bookstore in Hendersonville now. They have my book stuff over there. Pickled Treats in Gallatin. Put me on the spot. They're all on Amazon. There's a scattering of shops from Franklin to Gallatin that have them. But yeah, Amazon's probably your best bet.
Awesome. And I highly encourage everybody to check them out if they can, because they are great history books. If you just want to learn about a certain place, and you get all kinds of cool, creepy stories to kind of keep you awake at night and wonder what's really going on in some of these places. So thank
Yeah.
you so much for talking to me. If you ever need somebody to watch your back on exploring a haunted place, give me a shout. I would love to sometime. It's a great way to learn about history. So thank you so much for talking to me, and thanks for staying after school with Mr. Van Huss.
Yes, sir.